Thinking about making the switch from Goodreads to the StoryGraph, or just curious to see what the StoryGraph is all about? Well, in this video, I'm going to be comparing the two, so by the end, you'll be armed with enough information so that you can make up your own mind. Oh, and just to note, I'm going to be comparing Goodreads with the free version of the StoryGraph, but I will be talking about the pro features within the video. This video is broken up into sections. I'm going to be talking about all the important features that we look for in a book tracking and recommendations website. The topics I'm going to be talking about include book tracking, book information, book recommendations, community and reviews, and then my general thoughts at the end. Okay, let's start with the first, and that's book tracking. If you're looking at using a website like Goodreads or the StoryGraph, then you'll probably want to track all the books that you're going to read or that you're currently reading. Both websites do this, so let's compare. Both sites are very similar when it comes to tracking books. Search for a book you're reading using the search bar and find the drop-down on the page to select if you're reading it, read it, want to read it, etc. This book will then be added to your profile in whichever section you selected. Both of these sites are very similar when it comes to tracking books, but they differ in a few different ways. The first is the design of your profile. The Goodreads website is very dated and hasn't really been changed since I joined in 2014. When on your profile, you can see what you're currently reading and your updates. To see the books you've read or want to read, you click on some very basic looking links in your bookcases section. It's honestly pretty disappointing that this hasn't changed. When you click on, say, your read books, you're then shown a very dated looking table with all your books. Pretty boring, really. The app version of Goodreads looks a lot better, though. Clicking on these links shows previews of the books and, in general, looks a lot more modern. If only they'd transfer this design to the website. Your profile on the StoryGraph looks a lot more modern, if a little simple. You can see what you're currently reading, the type of books you like, what you've read recently, and your to-read pile. The StoryGraph certainly looks better, but on its own probably isn't enough to make the switch. One thing that the StoryGraph does really well that sets itself apart from Goodreads, though, is its reading statistics. As you track your books or import them from Goodreads, and you can see a link in the description for a video on how to do this, the StoryGraph starts tracking everything from the mood of the books you read, the pages, pace, genre, and more. Goodreads simply doesn't have this. The most it tracks is some basic stats in your year in review. The stats you can track in the StoryGraph may well be very useful if you're trying to figure out what types of books you prefer and your reading habits, but other than that, it may as well just be a feature that's quite fun to look at. Lastly, in this section, Goodreads, because it's Amazon, allows you to link up your Amazon account with Goodreads, and so you can add your Amazon books that you have purchased to your Goodreads account with just a few clicks. Honestly though, this feature could do with an overhaul. While in your Goodreads account, you have to link it up with Amazon, and then once done, you click a link within your settings to pull up the books you've purchased through your Amazon account. You can then add these books to your shelves. In the long run, this does save time, but if you're using the website, it's a long process. On the app, however, it's much simpler. Okay, so tracking aside, let's have a look at book information. Both websites give you really good book information, but they differ in a few ways. Let's compare by searching for the same book and pulling up its page. Both pages have similar information: the book's description, pages, genre, publish date, and more. But let's take a look at the differences. One of the most obvious differences is the StoryGraph's book stats. As well as next to the book genre, if you scroll down the left-hand side of the page, you'll see some extra information you're not going to see on Goodreads. The StoryGraph has made this extra information a priority and uses community reviews to fill it. In this section, you'll see everything from the mood of the book to the pace, character information, and more. It's honestly one of the best things about the StoryGraph. If you're more into character development than plot, you'll be able to, at a glance, see if a book is right for you or not. The StoryGraph, to its credit, also provides you with additional content warnings for each book. Most of these are user-submitted and some are author-approved. These are hidden unless you reveal them, and you can click to view more. If you want to make sure you're avoiding certain themes in books you're reading, this feature is invaluable. Okay, next, let's talk about one of the most important aspects of these websites, and that's book recommendations. Because we're already on the page for the book Uprooted, we'll start there. You'll notice that both pages have similar recommendation systems. Goodreads has Readers Also Enjoyed, and the StoryGraph has Browse Similar Books. Clicking on both brings up a list of recommendations. At first glance, it's clear that Goodreads has a lot more data to draw from because its recommendations are, well, better. The Goodreads recommendations also have more important information attached. They contain a brief description and the average rating. The StoryGraph seems to favor their own data over both of these things. Goodreads also has another advantage here because on the book page itself, it also shows more books by the author and lists with the book in, which are both additional ways to find more recommendations. Both websites have another way to give you recommendations though, and that's the recommendations page. Both websites claim to use the data you provide them to provide you with books they think you will like. For the Goodreads website, the recommendations page has two sections. One based on your to-read shelf and the other based on your did-not finish shelf. On the app, you have a recommendations for you screen. In almost all cases, I found the Goodreads recommendations on these pages to be poor. Particularly on the app, the recommendations are dated, don't make sense, and are simply wrong. It's like Goodreads isn't tracking my reading at all. Such a shame when they have the mammoth of Amazon to help them out. The StoryGraph isn't much better. The free version of the site doesn't use your library of read or to-be-read books. Instead, it asks you to tell them what you like to read when creating your account. It then uses this information to populate a list. You can also get more specific by customizing this as you go. The real recommendations come when you pay for the Pro version of the StoryGraph. With the Pro version, which is currently $4.99 a month, you can get the following features. Personalize similar books. When browsing books, see similar book suggestions that are unique to you. Up next suggestions. Not sure what to read next? We'll look at your to-read pile and give you smart, personalized suggestions. You can't blame the StoryGraph for this. Goodreads makes its money from people buying Amazon books. The StoryGraph makes its money from monthly subscriptions and affiliate commission when you buy books using their links. Okay, so recommendations aside, let's look at community and reviews. I don't know about you, but one of the most important features of these websites for me is the community reviews. So let's take a look at them side by side. Comparing the two pages again, it's clear that Goodreads makes reviews a priority. Not only are they easy to find, but they're front and center. Amazon as a company knows the importance of reviews, so they've made them obvious. The StoryGraph, on the other hand, has made them secondary to their stats. Of course, the stats themselves are part of the reviews, but to actually read the reviews, you have to click a small and not so obvious link. The reviews on the StoryGraph are one of its weakest features. They're incredibly basic. Let's put them side by side with Goodreads. Here's why Goodreads, or should I say Amazon, is the master of reviews. In each Goodreads review, there are a few components that make them worth reading. 1. The reader's profile photo is there, showing us they're a real person and helping us connect to them. 2. You can like and/or comment on reviews. This alone allows the reader to join in or read with conversations other readers are having about the books they're reading or that they might want to read. It also allows readers to share their opinion and discuss. The StoryGraph doesn't have this. Each review contains a date and you can filter reviews. The date of the review is so important, as is being able to filter. The reviews on the StoryGraph don't have any of this. It's incredibly unclear when the reviews were posted, and it's virtually impossible to find good or bad ones, so you can make an informed decision as a reader. Having said all of this, when actually leaving a review, the StoryGraph does a much better job than Goodreads. With Goodreads, you get a text box to fill and that's it. With the StoryGraph, you can answer questions, check boxes, add text, and the best feature yet, you can add half or quarter star ratings. Result. Aside from reviews, both websites have community features between them. I'll focus on the ones that are different. One such thing that sets the StoryGraph apart from Goodreads is its Buddy Reads feature. If you have friends on the StoryGraph, you can find a book that you would like to read together. Click Start a Buddy Read and invite away. You can even add the StoryGraph members should you not have any friends on the platform. This feature is a fantastic way to track the books you're reading in a book club. Members can be added, rules be set, and away you go. Goodreads, however, has been around longer. So they have groups with forums, ask the author, trivia, quizzes, and more. Although just because these features exist doesn't mean they're any good, because Goodreads hasn't updated them in years. Okay, so now we've gone through all the important features of a book tracking and book recommendations website, let me give you my final thoughts. Goodreads is a website that's been around for a very long time. This means it has a huge amount of data, reviews, books, and it's likely that all your friends are already on it. This alone likely means that you're going to get a more well-rounded view of the books you're looking to read. This will likely keep Goodreads as the go-to website for book tracking and book recommendations, but this alone shouldn't be the reason to stick with Goodreads. The fact is, the website is especially dated. For years it was buggy, hard to use, and honestly a pain in the butt, but it was the only option. The StoryGraph is stepping up to the plate as a good alternative. Sure, it has a long way to go, but they're always making changes. In fact, they're transparent about it too, showing us what they're working on and allowing us to suggest changes. There's a long way to go though, with new features needing to be added and others needing to be tweaked. Plus, there's the monthly cost. With Goodreads, it's free, which will keep people on the platform, and with StoryGraph, important features are locked behind a paywall. But let's not forget that Amazon is a giant, and a questionable one at that. The StoryGraph is an ethical alternative, one that even uses more ethical affiliate links sending money to local bookstores. For me personally, I'm going to keep both. I'm excited about where the StoryGraph is going, but I'm not ready to make the switch just yet. But I want to know from you, what do you think about the StoryGraph in general, and are you going to make the switch from Goodreads to the StoryGraph? I would love to know, so leave me a comment. And I will see you next Thursday for another video.